Jerry Gidel is ready to unravel all the USDA report and talk about the corn rally that happened on Thursday, right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So Jerry, let's talk about right away talk about the USDA report. So we had more beans being planted by the American farmer, and that's what the Department of Agriculture says.
Yes. Well, they came in with a number approximately 2.9 million up from the estimate, and that was similar to what the crowd was kind of looking for in that 2.8 to 2.9, 2.3 million. But the real surprise, and you kind of let me provide that opportunity today, was the fact that the farmer surveys, various expectations here from the trade, and that at the most they were looking for about a similar type of adjustment of 2.9 million down. There was some earlier expectations from the USDA of up around 3.9 million, but the USDA's survey of producers out there only suggested that the numbers were going to be more like 4.6 million decline in corn plantings. Well, that's very impressive. There's no doubt about it. Basically, the scenario is that and last year's dramatic jump in acres by about 4.5 to 5 million acres seems like that the producers have decided that wasn't a good situation, so they're going to go move a different direction and reduce that back. Now it's all the top 12 states ended up having reductions, so and that. North Dakota, I think, led the way here at 700,000 on acres in that. But then we had Minnesota down. We had uh, uh, South Dakota off slightly, and that I think it's 1.3 total, something like that in those three states. But also the Eastern Corn Belt, including Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan and Wisconsin. They also had a significant reduction here of the 1.3 million total there for that area. And Iowa and Missouri took about 600,000. So, boy, we took the acres down in the heart of the Midwest, and so in that case, it's definitely going to reduce our output dramatically. At this point, some quick figures kind of put that number down below 1.5, and the real interesting scenario is that the USDA is probably still going to use a 181 bushel yield, and that, and because that's what they chose back in February. I and others in the industry continue to have some question marks about the USDA's trendline yields. I'll have another opportunity to discuss that at their data users meeting in Chicago coming up here on April 16th. So I encourage people to definitely come to the Bleacher Center in Chicago and check with the USDA and get their invitation to come in for the one-day event. But we're getting a little offside here on that. The interesting twist here at the same time, we get the big acreage numbers and that and I think the one thing we don't want to forget about in the feed grain world is that corn is the major feed grain out there, is no doubt, and that. But there is the other major feed grains: sorghum, oats, barley. Those three totals actually put up a total here of 6.1 million acres, 6.18 million acres, and that is that's add to it. I have to say that probably the final numbers on that won't probably be that big a decline, but overall, the scenario of having 700,000 less sorghum. I think it's where's my numbers here? Oh, 240,000 numbers of oats and 535,000 lower barley acres. Uh, Definitely is going to make things interesting. We got plenty of stuff in our inventories and all that kind of stuff, but it does mean that our output for the coming year is going to be tightened up dramatically. Now, is that going to turn us into a $7, $8 corn market? No. But at the same time, it's definitely going to make things a lot more interesting here and make the weather even more important here going forward from that standpoint. So, with the beans, the numbers at 2.9 are going the right direction for our needs. There's still lots of discussion as to how strong of renewable diesel demand we got in front of us here. West Coast demand at this point for the ports, things of that nature is another feature of it on soybeans. But the soybean market got kind of lost in the fact that uh, some of our recent exports have been a little sluggish, and I think that's part of the reason why the bean market, because we did have only about 9.7 million, I think it was, in sales that were announced on Thursday. So that kind of reemphasized some of that demand. The real twist on this continues to be as to what kind of crop comes out of Brazil and our export demand going forward. But right now, at least, corn and it's somewhat interesting feed uh, compadre there, wheat, when we do feed wheat and cattle industries and stuff like that. I think that was the reason for the big surprise that we had on yesterday.
Yeah, so in your opinion, what has pushed this report saying that there will be an increased acres for soybeans was the South American crop?
Oh, not so much the South American crop. It's there's been uncertainty there, and we've had recent declines and projections of various crop sizes down there, both in Argentina and in Brazil. There's still a lot of uncertainty as are we going to push this USD push their crop size down closer to 150 versus the 155 that they've put out here in March, and that there still seems to be enough logic that that particular market could be uh, or that particular crop size in Brazil could end up being closer to the 150, 151. I don't know that we're going to see a 145. I think things have improved in the northern areas of Brazil that had later plantings and that. But I've also heard that there's been some issues in Mato Grosso do Sul and even Paraná, which at one time Paraná was overdone in moisture and that, but there's some concerns about that. And then even in Argentina, we've had all kinds of crazy weather there. We was too dry that hurt some of the harvested acres on soybeans and corn. Then we had too much rain. Now we're right at this point, at least, they've one of the major exchanges down there actually reduced their corn number by 2 to 2.5 million metric tons. I think it was Buenos Aires. This just a couple days before our USDA report here. So South America is part of it, but I think the general demand. By the way, we ended up having a looks like another record crush that's going to be announced here on Monday of 196 million bushels. In general, we've had record crushes on soybeans here, except for I think January because of the weather there. Every month this crop season, because of the general demand for renewable diesel. Now there's lots of different longer term theories being thrown around, and actually the EPA even came out with some type of a report here today about the fact that they have not supporting some additional soybean conversion into bean oil or into renewable diesel. And I think that it continues to be interesting that the administration at this point is not really following some of the industry's approach and the market's ideas about how much soybean oil is going to be utilized in renewable diesel. The biggest problem about it is that that's a huge market, and to some extent, uh, there's no way the U.S. agriculture can create a completely renewable diesel based on vegetable oils from soybeans. And so I think that's the whole reason why the EPA has been somewhat sluggish in supporting some of the early developments of this. But overall, there's still a lot of renewable energy ideas floating around the whole industry here. And even some of it's being involved in strategic uh, aviation fuel too. And so there's lots of different things floating around here as to demand for renewables, and soybean oil does fit that bill.
Yes, and the market reaction considering this kind of report, I think it was pretty logical with those double-digit rally of the corn.
Yes, yes. Well, it really shocked the markets. There's been a slowly improving market here for about 2 to 3 weeks. In that it started in ahead of the March report on production, or excuse me, the March USDA balance supply demand balance sheets and that. And now that we mentioned here, we're talking about 4.7 million acres. If you take 180 million, 180 bushel average yield and put that together with it, with that does take your supply down pretty significantly here when you're talking about you know just using 4.5 times 180, you're talking about a number of about 500 to 600 million output, and that's going to tighten up our potential long-term supply and how much carryover stock we're going to have. Now we've got a big carryover crop now, and it's going to be interesting. Sometimes you have these kind of things go on when people start to realize, well, oh, my nearby prices of corn are not too bad. I think I'll go ahead and start getting some of that in my inventory, because I really think there's been a lot of people around the world have just said hand to mouth, and oh, I need some that in 2 months. I'll go ahead and buy my 2 months some supply to show up then. Things really dramatically changed after the when everybody's rushing out to get the longer term supplies under control because of what was going on in the Black Sea and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But all that has really calmed down, to say the least. And so now we're going to have a different approach here. And then you throw in some weather this summer and things like that. I think it's going to make things quite interesting here in the world of corn prices as we go. Uh, as I said, I don't know if you want to anticipate new crop corn prices to be $6, $7, but a number up in the fives wouldn't surprise somebody on some uncertainty here in the spring. Because right now, some of the National Weather Service's projections are for above normal temps and spotty moisture here during the spring. And if it does turn out to be limited moisture, and that the last year we had not quite a spike there in late May and June on the concerns about the crop size and what was going to happen. Because I really think the USDA's trend line yield has things to desire on that. Part of it's been from the standpoint that one of the things that people look at they determine sizes of a crop is how is the stocks reports following the total number of bushels that were created. And the interesting thing about it that also added to some of the price points on corn was that we had a carryover stock number for corn that was 80 to 100 million less than expected when there was and also to some extent the usage factors suggested that maybe the crop size for last year was overestimated. And that's something that I've been scratching my head about, in the fact that we reduced our harvested acres on the final number by about 550,000 acres. I have to say 300 of that, 250, 300 of that was in Kansas. And it was spread out around the rest of the Midwest and that. But at the same time, we did not see a big reduction. In reality, with the less acres, that turned into higher yields, and that's what surprised me. Having the 177 bushel yield, I might have believe a 175 or 175 and a half up from the USDA's November number, but one, I think it's 173.9. But I'm still cautious that there's a 177 crop out there on corn. So that's added to the enthusiasm we had, and I think that's going to make things interesting as we go through the spring here on the corn side.
Yes, but still, I like your bold prediction about the corn prices. So what I think is going to happen in the next couple of weeks is that there will be a lot of market anxiety regarding the U.S. planting numbers.
Oh, definitely. When you make that dramatic a change, and then you add in those other uh, feed grains, and that the total supply of feed grains is in the U.S. is going to change dramatically overall. From there, like if okay, well, corn's not going to be there, but oats are still going to be plentiful, or barley's going to be high. Well, all of a sudden, their plantings aren't going to be as high either. So, and so that's the thing that makes the thing interesting on the corn side, is that it wasn't just corn that the U.S. producers indicated they were going to plant less of. It was the whole family of four feed grains of corn, sorghum, oats, and barley, and that. And so that definitely puts an interesting twist on people's attitudes. And I think it suggests that there's going to be a lot more people willing to build little supplies up and ahead of themselves here. And so that's going to help support things on the setbacks, and also put more concerns on what our output will be on corn. And the side of the soybeans at this point, 3 million acres, and you take just a quick figure of 50 million, 50 bushels to the average. Well, that's 150 million more supply. That really isn't a huge increase in our total supplies for the coming year on the soybean side. So soybeans are going to be there. Wheat's going to be quite interesting. We've got quite a tussle going around the world these days on wheat, primarily because the Black Sea and the issues over there, and they're still talking about Russia trying to have a big crop again this year. I don't know. Last year's quality of this crop, I think, is poor, but at this point, the U.S. We've, by the way, ended up had some increases in spring wheat in Durham, and a small increase in winter wheat. But overall, we're still down about 2 million acres from last year, and so right now, at least, there's been some rains in the southern plains and that. So the yield prospects are still looking respectable. I wouldn't say they're guaranteed great, but actually, of all things, the drier areas, I think, are still Kansas and Nebraska, and maybe up into Montana is where the dryness is at as we go into spring. So we'll see how that comes about. But right now, at least, the wheat market also is one of these markets that tends to have a little bit of strength in the spring, so we'll see how that turns out.
All right. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Right. Well, it's going to be an interesting week next week and see how quickly we get some follow through. Right now, I think the first barrier on these corn, or excuse me, on nearby corn is going to be the 450 type of area, 455, and that new crop corn. Surprisingly, with the carry in the market on the December, now we're not getting that cash price at $5, but we might have something there that could carry us up closer to the $5 mark. But producers have got to go ahead and look at these opportunities. We still got a lot of corn in our bin, and the soybean market is still heavily dependent on what goes on in South America. So we got lots of uncertainty ahead of us, but at least we've got a little window of opportunity here and uncertainty that I think is going to give us some potentially prices that can be utilized for sales for 2024.
We'll see.
Take care.